All right, so we're sitting here at the Temple of Apollo in Bassae. I
Right.
may not be pronouncing that right, but
You probably aren't.
probably are. Yeah,
I've discovered everything
high
we try to
probability.
pronounce is incorrect.
So
But
we'll go with Bassae, right?
right.
So we're at the Temple of Apollo in Bassae, and this place is one of the most well-preserved Greek temples that they have found
Yeah.
for good reason because the
It's in the middle of nowhere.
the traffic jam we went through up in the mountains was a herd of goats.
Yeah. Yeah. It
That
was dirt roads.
that
It
was
was
it
end
was
of the road,
yeah.
goats, shepherds. Yeah. We saw one car and both of us freaked out.
Yes.
So yeah, it's in the middle of nowhere. So you're not ripping off this marble.
And
You're someplace a lot closer that you
yeah,
can steal from.
to be fair, it was one of those where Google tried to save us 2 minutes by driving through all these back dirt mountain roads
Right.
and herds of goats.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but hey, we got here. But yes, it's obviously very remote. It's up on this beautiful ridge overlooking a valley, and you can see kind of from behind us, there's stone everywhere. They've put this temple, the pillars were actually up.
Yeah.
Even 1900, the pillars were up. They've reconstructed the inside. It's one of the few temples you will see, you were pointing out, that actually has the inside chamber
Yeah.
intact.
Yeah, we see a lot of pillars up around,
Yeah.
partial pillars, but this had all the pillars and the inside chamber,
Right.
where you kind of went in and worship. But yeah, it's a beautiful. I mean, we have some video that
Yeah,
we'll
we'll
cut
throw
in.
some up there.
Right.
Because what throws you is actually all you see is what looks like a big high-tech circus tent. And what they've done is they've covered this temple so they can continually work
Yeah.
on it, put it back together. It's interesting. We walked around back there. There's a little stone workshop
Yeah,
where clearly if they need a stone in certain areas, they can
to
cut
cut
it,
in
throw it in
specific
there.
pieces.
Yeah, so
Right. Yeah.
it's quite impressive.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we saw even in some of the information placards was places like this were places of healing. And it immediately made the connection to the temple of Epidaurus.
Epidaurus was the city,
Yeah.
and the temple of Asclepion.
Asclepius.
Yeah,
Yes.
Asclepius.
Asclepius.
Yeah.
And we were there. We started a conversation. We were there because that was a fascinating site. We even talked about doing it a quick video, but both of us said, I don't feel like my thoughts are completely drawn together in a way that makes sense because there's a lot of crazy imagery at this
Right.
temple of Asclepius
Yeah.
in Epidaurus,
Right.
right?
Well, Asclepius is the Greek god with the staff, that's serpent, that's kind of
Yes.
swirling around
We'll
it.
start there.
Right. That is what you see. That for pharmacies, you'll see
Yeah.
it when it comes to pharmacies.
Yeah.
The snake wrapped around the serpent.
The modern
The
medical
serpent wrapped
symbol.
around the staff. And so you and I started talking about, it's like, man, what is the deal with this healing serpent type thing? And does it tie in at all with the biblical Christian imagery of, let's say, the serpent in the garden, or Moses, how he threw the staff down and it
That's
turned
right.
into a serpent, and then he picked it back up.
And
Yeah,
then-
there's just lots of things that we're trying to tie together,
Yeah.
and we had trouble doing it.
And then ultimately in the wilderness, why does he put a staff up in the
Right.
middle of the wilderness with a bronze serpent over
Right,
it?
exactly.
And we've heard some people talk about that. But yeah, what is the thing that ties all these ideas together? That's what we were really wrestling with the last couple of days.
Right.
And just walking around this place, I think some things started to click, and we just spent a couple minutes talking about that.
Right.
First of all, let's go back to this idea of the Asclepion in Epidaurus.
Right.
Is that I picked up a book because I was fascinated by it, and I downloaded it, started reading. One of the very first things I read was that, yeah, all these little towns and villages had doctors, right? They knew about herbs. They knew about how to heal if you sprained your ankle and things like that.
Right.
But these medical, you might call them like medical spas almost,
Yeah.
were for cases there that the doctors couldn't heal,
Yeah.
or almost the hopeless cases,
Yeah. Well, similar to, of the premier hospitals in the United States.
like a
You know,
Mayo
you don't,
Clinic.
yeah,
or
you don't
something.
go into the Mayo Clinic with the flu.
Yeah.
You're referred to the Mayo Clinic by all these other hospitals all over the country that basically say, this is we're over our skis on this. Let's get
Yeah.
you to the Mayo Clinic. Let's get you to MD Anderson. And so, Asclepion the Asclepion and that temple there was clearly where other cities would send their sick people that they didn't really know how to heal.
Yeah.
And so right off the
Yeah.
bat, they're taking the roughest cases. And,
Which
we
was-
made the comment that it was successful. It's not like it was, again, we always go back and look at antiquity and myths, and we say something like, well, they didn't know any better. They thought
Yeah,
there was a god up there in the
yeah,
sun, and they thought there was a god in the moon, and that's how cavemen basically explained the world. But then that doesn't explain. It's a lot like Delphi. It doesn't explain why it was so successful for thousands of years.
yeah. Why? So one of the things we threw out there was maybe they're just cherry picking the
Right.
easy cures that no one else seemed to have figured out, right?
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
they're just cherry
Exactly.
picking that. That's not the case
No.
from what we've been reading. That's
Uh-uh.
not the case.
Yeah.
These were the hopeless cases. And then, yeah, to your point, why, if they didn't have some measure of a success, why did they continue to grow? Why was a place like Epidaurus around for 1,000 years? People coming from all over the region
Right.
as a last ditch effort to say, maybe they can heal me, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they can figure this out.
Right.
And so, yeah, they had to have been on something. And the other thing you see, it's not just medicine; it's a combination of things because there was the baths,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Talked about all the baths. Um, there was all kinds of different. You had a whole compound where if you were a patient there, they put you in this room. There was entertainment, beautiful theater there
Yeah.
at Epidaurus,
Yeah.
and so they had the healing waters coming in from the mountain. So it was this whole holistic thing. And then, of course, there was also the religious aspect as well.
Right.
Because when you actually got to the temple itself, when they thought they were at a place where you were ready for healing, it ultimately came down to this pretty crazy what ceremony where you would go into the temple and you would lay down on these cold marble floors and you would actually wait to hear from the god Asclepius.
Yeah, they would kind of say, not really go to sleep, but the implication was that they were sort of in a trance, and that sort of goes back to Eleusis, where we talked about the spiked wine, was it a hallucinogenic wine type thing? But because when they said they would put you in this room, you would lay down, and you would lay there until you met the serpent.
The serpent, yeah.
And so then we're thinking, okay, so that's weird. That's the same thing we heard about in Eleusis. That's the same thing we've heard about with the hallucinogenic wine. And so were they implementing that, to kind of come face to face with the serpent there?
Right.
Yeah.
And the real quick, the priest, it was also interesting because the priest didn't tell you what to do.
Yeah.
The priest actually asked you what you heard.
What the serpent told you.
What the serpent told you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the final thing of, okay, then we're complete. This is what you're going to go do.
Right.
Not everyone was healed, but again, pretty decent track record of healing.
Right. So Asclepius is tied to the snake because that's who you would meet when you were in this sort of sleeping half trance state, however they went about doing that. But then it goes back to Moses in the wilderness, lifting up the snake to the children of Israel.
How does all this tie
together?
together?
I mean, is just kind of, snakes were obviously fascinating creatures to today. There's something about them that's really, really creepy, And so were they just mesmerized by the idea of the snake, or is there something more that kind of ties it all together? So where did you want to start with?
Well, so we
tying it together.
We started with the idea, and other people have said it. This is not from us, but other people have had the idea that looking at the serpent is a way of facing what you fear, right?
Right.
And so that's kind of the easy one. We've heard that before. That's how you could talk about Moses in the wilderness, where he puts the staff up. What was the actual remedy for a snake bite? It was actually to go back to the snake and look at it and face it.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And you actually see that motif here because you had a variety of illnesses, but ultimately you had to face a serpent.
Yeah. And so there's some kind of simple psychology. Let's face our fears.
Yeah.
We're afraid of the snake, but let's actually face it. Let's look at it.
Yeah.
Let's break it down a little bit, right?
Yeah.
It's not as bad as you might think. They're not as dangerous as you might think. But then you have to reach out. There's this kind of weird moment where you reach out and embrace the snake.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit more than just facing your fears, right?
And we saw these weird carvings and motifs yesterday at Sparta at a museum we went to. And I think I even took a picture, so we'll throw the picture up.
Right.
But there were several pictures of a serpent on one hand and a guy reaching out to grasp it at the other.
Right.
And we saw that and we thought, what's the deal with that?
Yeah.
Like, what is the deal with grasping the snake. But then today, as we're walking around, we're thinking, well, that's the next step. It's not enough to just look at the snake, to face your fear.
Right.
You actually have to grasp it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
well, the grasping it in the case of Moses, you grasp the snake and it turns into a staff. So here's that combination again, where the snake and staff, for some reason, go together.
Yeah.
And I think when we were talking about it, saying, okay, what is it about grasping the snake that turns it into a staff? And you started thinking, okay, well, scientists knew this in the ancient world, that the venom could actually be used to heal some remedies, and it used as a remedy. And so there's something about grasping the snake that turns it into a tool, that turns it into something useful,
right.
that now you can
So
actually use to move forward.
yeah, so first of all, grasping the snake, I think, represents what it means to tame it. Not just look at it, but to tame it.
Right.
It represents the danger that,
Yeah.
but also the potential of
Yeah.
payoff if you're actually willing to face that danger and you're actually willing to grasp it and you're willing to tame it. I used the example earlier of like a wild horse. Man, that thing's dangerous.
Right.
Man, but if I could get a bridle on that thing and break
Sure.
it,
Yeah.
now it's a powerful tool.
Yeah.
Right? Now I've tamed what was dangerous.
Yeah.
And our first reaction today, honestly, when we see a snake, steer clear of that thing.
Right.
You know? And there was something about the ancients that understood, no, if we can size it up, understand what's going on, we see it bite people and we see it inject venom, but if we can somehow channel that correctly, and that's the grasping, I think.
Yeah, and the taming of the snake is not like taming a horse, like you're going to round it up and use it as a pet.
No.
But the taming, but taming it in the sense that we're gonna see the utility in the venom. We're going to see the utility in that which can kill us. There's actually utility in also what can save us. And so you have this dual nature of the staff that kind of looks like a snake, obviously a straightened out snake. So you have the staff that helps you walk and move forward, and the dual nature of then you have the snake, which can kill you. And when you can control those two things, when you can first look at it and understand it, and then reach out and grasp it, then you have something that you've changed the nature of it, of something that can cause harm to something that can actually heal.
And that's the image then of Moses, right? Throwing his staff on the ground and it turns into a snake. It looks like something that is dangerous, untamable. And the miracle is Moses picks it up and it turns back into a staff. And at least at some level, what that's demonstrating is that, like, Moses worships a God that can actually take what is dangerous and actually utilize it for his purposes. Now, the Egyptian, we talked about the Egyptian priests, they did the same thing, which is kind of an odd thing in the story, right? But then Moses' staff, okay, so Moses' snake eats the others.
Right.
Which is, okay, whose God is the bigger one here?
But it's also sort of an indication that Moses is saying, I can take something dangerous and turn it into something useful.
Yeah.
And it's the Egyptians said, yeah, we can do that too. We understand the snake in the same way you understand the snake.
They understood that, yeah.
But then when his snake ate their snake, it's like, nope, I've got a deeper understanding. I win.
Right? Yeah. Whose authority, we talked about this in other videos, whose authority is greater here?
Yeah.
Like, okay, you can do that. Congratulations. Whose authority is greater? Well, my staff just ate your staff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then you go to the children of Israel in the wilderness, that they were to look upon the snake. Remember step 1?
Yeah.
And when they did that, the snakes didn't go away. The snakes didn't even stop biting you, right?
Yeah.
It just stopped killing you, which is, I mean, I don't know. It's just a fascinating idea. It's like, hey, you know, let's start with baby steps. Let's start with step 1. Look at the thing that can kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Analyze it. And once you understand it, you gaze your intent focus on it, then it no longer kills you. It still hurts. They're still there.
Yeah.
You haven't tamed it yet, but that's step 1. And it's almost like it's saying, this is step 1. Look at the thing that can kill you as also the thing that can save you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, then you tie into, golly, we can just keep going down this rabbit trail,
this
but
could
you
be a
tie
long
into Jesus is the snake in the wilderness in the New Testament. And it's like Jesus, the very thing that has the authority over life and death, the authority to judge, which is what the Pharisees had a problem with him with, is not the fact that he was healing people. It's the authority that he claimed. There's your authority, and that authority that certainly has the right to judge you also has the right to also has the ability to save you.
Yeah. And we were talking about tying this into some of maybe Jesus's healings and some of the similarities, but one of the biggest ones that jumped out at me, and I think we missed this, is, so you go to the Asclepius and Epidaurus, and you lay there and wait for the encounter of the God before the healing is complete, right?
Yeah.
So when Jesus goes around healing, and we might pick this apart a little bit later, maybe some of the similarities, differences, but when Jesus heals someone, right?
Yeah.
What just happened? They encountered a God.
Yeah. Well, also
they encountered the God.
Right. But also the interesting thing is a lot of times he would ask them, what do you want? Do you want me to heal you?
Yeah.
He asked the blind man, what do you want me to do for you? Which is always, you always read, that's like, come on, you're God. You can figure this one
Obviously,
out, right?
Yeah.
This is not a tough one, why I'm here, right? But it's almost like it's that step of being involved. Go into that trance-like state and meet the God and allow him to tell you what you need to do.
It's another variation of you have to look at the snake.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
Of course I want to get healed. Well, do you? Because you're going to have to face this.
Yeah.
Even at just the moment, if you want an encounter with the God, you're going to have to face this.
Right.
And maybe that simple question, what is it that you want? Maybe that's what it was meant to do.
Yeah. Say it out loud.
Yeah.
Say it out loud, and you take part in this. I'm not just going to run around touching people and healing them, which he didn't do.
Right.
He said, be involved in it, be engaged. And I also think that ties into why he didn't seem to heal people the same way. I mean,
it was always different.
He healed 5 or 6 blind people, and it was always something different,
And the lame people and
leprosy, and it was always kind of this unique thing. And it's almost like the point of it was, don't try to figure out a formula for this. You're not going to take the formula of here's what Jesus did, and man, now I can do this and I can help other people. That's not the formula.
Yeah.
That's not the point of it. The point is to meet the Creator face to face, engage him, be involved in your healing. Take your own responsibility, even if it's just that tiny thing of, I want you to heal me, right? That's all. You take that responsibility and allow the healer to do his part, but you have to engage first.
Yeah.
And so, man, it really does kind of tie together some interesting aspects.
Yeah.
That were, a little bit disparate. I've kind of had, we've talked about it before. We kind of have our head wrapped around the idea of the snake, the idea of healing. But you're right. There was something about going to that Asclepius and the snake and the staff again. That's like, man, how are these tied together?
Yeah, how do you tie that together? How do you tie the images of someone trying to grasp the snake,
right,
and seeing the snake in your vision,
right,
at the temple? Like, how does all that tie together? So I think maybe we're at least on the right track,
Yeah.
And to wrap this up, I would say, because I hear crowds over there,
yeah,
and we
I
actually had
a bus
our
has
first
come in.
live audience over here a couple minutes ago, right. So that was interesting.
Yeah, groupies, that's fun.
Right. So we talked about clearly the snake then, for Egyptians, the Greeks, represented this idea of great danger, but also potential healing.
Right.
That which can kill you if it can be tamed.
Right.
Turned into a tool.
Yeah.
It can actually become the axis, the staff.
Right.
That brings heaven down and brings healing.
Right. The staff, the connection between heaven and earth. Yes.
And I use this example. I thought of the example then of chemotherapy and cancer. So what is essentially chemotherapy?
Yeah.
It's basically poison that's injected to you.
Yeah.
Brings you to the brink of death.
Right.
Kills the cancer, hopefully.
Right.
And then allows you to heal. But you have to ingest what is the venom. Right?
Yeah.
In ancient terms, the venom.
Yeah.
You have to face this. You have to be willing to go to the brink of death if you have any chance actually at healing life.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really cool image that ties all this together.
Yeah, it's a modern example. And even to take that a step further, I think, sort of the holistic, that word's a little bit overused, but, we talked about cancer treatments of America. Yeah. When the patient actually engages in the healing, when the patient is on board, it's this idea of, don't just go to the doctor and say, give me the pill that's going to heal me. right? You actually have to take part in
We
your
want the
own
quick
healing.
medicine. Yeah, we
Yeah,
want the
that's what
quick
we want
fix today.
moderns, and we assume that science is going to provide that. And look, in some cases that can happen, but in the most desperate cases, what we're finding out, what medicine is finding out is, and we're going to need the patient's buy-in. And if you have this
Mm-hmm.
mental idea that, oh great, this type of brain cancer, I'm gone in 6 months, and you go home and lay down and die, that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what's going to happen. And doctors will tell you, yeah, there's really no medicine for that. Once you've lost hope, there's no medicine for that. And so it kind of ties together this interaction between, what do you want me to do? Look at the snake, engage it,
Yeah.
and then we can reach out and tame the snake and use it as a tool. But it takes all those moving parts working together to successfully heal the most difficult cases. And that's the case today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just a pill. It's, well, those are the easy cases. It's addressing lifestyle changes, health, spiritual. What's cool is we saw all that at this Asclepius that
Right.
we went to, this
Yeah.
Asclepian. And we might talk a little bit more about maybe how Jesus actually does that in these kind of micro cases
Yeah,
when,
that sounds like a podcast
yeah,
down the road. That'll be
yeah,
fun.
we'll do that.
Yeah. But just the idea that the ancients had a lot more figured out than we give them credit for. And even the most cutting edge medicine today actually kind of takes that
Yeah,
pattern of what the ancients
yeah,
knew, 3,000 years ago.
yeah.
There you go. Well, this is fun.
Thanks for checking this out. We will talk to you maybe the next site. We're heading to Olympia today.
Yeah, there we go. All right. The Olympic Games. Let's do it.
Yep.